What if Abraham Lincoln hadn't died on that tragic night at Ford's Theater? Imagine if he survived the attack and returned to lead the country. How would America's future have changed? Could he have stopped some of the struggles that followed the Civil War? Today, we'll explore a fascinating alternate timeline where Lincoln lives and the course of history takes a dramatically different path. Let's dive into this what-if scenario and discover how one man's survival could reshape a nation. It's April 14th, 1865, a night that shook the United States. President Abraham Lincoln, the man who led the Union to victory in the Civil War, was shot by John Wilkes Booth. In our real timeline, Lincoln died the next morning, leaving the country to his vice president, Andrew Johnson. But imagine if history played out differently. In this version, Booth's bullet grazes Lincoln's skull, leaving him injured but alive. After months of recovery, Lincoln returns to the presidency, physically weaker but more determined than ever to rebuild the nation. What happens next is a version of America that could have been, and it's full of both hope and challenges. When Lincoln finally returns to the Oval Office, he knows the country is still divided. The Civil War may be over, but the wounds haven't healed. His first priority is Reconstruction, the plan to bring the southern states back into the Union and help former slaves build new lives. Lincoln's approach is different from what actually happened in history. In real life, his successor, Andrew Johnson, let many Southern leaders return to power and wasn't tough enough on protecting the rights of freed slaves. But Lincoln's survival changes everything. He stays true to his promise of malice toward none, with charity for all. He doesn't seek revenge against the South, but also won't allow the injustices of slavery to continue in a different form. Lincoln makes the Freedmen's Bureau stronger than ever. This group is set up to help newly freed African Americans get food, housing, and jobs. But Lincoln goes even further. Under his leadership, freed slaves receive land grants, plots of farmland taken from large plantations that were owned by former Confederate leaders. For the first time, many black families get the chance to own land and build a future for themselves. Schools also begin to open all across the South, giving education to black children who had been denied it before. At the same time, Lincoln works closely with Congress to pass two major amendments to the Constitution. The 14th Amendment says that everyone born in the United States is a citizen, with equal rights under the law. The 15th Amendment makes sure black men can vote in elections. Thanks to Lincoln's leadership, these amendments are passed faster and with fewer delays than in our real history. His popularity helps unite moderates and radical Republicans to push these changes through. But not everyone is happy about Lincoln's plans. In the South, many white people resent the changes, especially the former Confederate leaders who lost their power and wealth. Secret groups like the Ku Klux Klan are formed to spread fear and stop black people from voting or owning land. They use violence and intimidation to fight against Lincoln's policies. Lincoln knows he can't let these groups succeed. He works with Congress to pass the Federal Anti-Terrorism Act of 1867, a new law that gives the government power to stop violent groups like the Klan. Federal troops remain in the South to protect black communities and enforce the law. With soldiers guarding polling stations, freedmen can vote without fear of being attacked. Lincoln also encourages Southern Unionists, white Southerners who stayed loyal to the Union during the Civil War, to take leadership roles in the Southern states. This helps weaken the old Confederate elite and gives the South a better chance at rebuilding with new leadership. By 1868, Lincoln is faced with a tough decision. People across the country are begging him to run for a third term as president. No president has ever served more than 2 terms before, and Lincoln doesn't want to break this tradition. But his supporters, including Frederick Douglass and many freedmen, argue that the country still needs him. Lincoln reluctantly agrees and runs for re-election. The campaign is fierce and bitter, but Lincoln wins. His victory is a turning point for America. In 1869, history is made when Hiram Revels becomes the first African American elected to Congress. Lincoln also appoints Frederick Douglass to a high-ranking government position, making Douglass one of the most influential figures in Washington. These milestones show that Lincoln's policies are helping freedmen gain political power and representation. With Lincoln leading the way, African American communities begin to thrive. Schools, churches, and businesses grow rapidly, creating strong and self-sufficient communities. The government provides funding to historically black colleges like Howard University, ensuring that education becomes a cornerstone of these new communities. For the first time, freedmen see real opportunities to succeed in America. At the same time, Lincoln's leadership inspires change beyond the United States. Abolitionist movements in other countries like Brazil take note of America's progress. Brazil, which still allows slavery at this time, ends the practice earlier than in our real timeline, partly inspired by Lincoln's example. Lincoln doesn't just focus on fixing problems at home. He also strengthens America's position on the global stage. In 1867, Lincoln works with his Secretary of State, William H. Seward, to pressure France to withdraw its army from Mexico. This stops European powers from interfering in the Americas and helps stabilize the region. But not all challenges are solved. As more settlers move westward, tensions with Native American tribes increase. The Industrial Revolution is also creating new problems, like poor working conditions for factory workers. Lincoln knows he can't fix everything at once, but his efforts lay the groundwork for future leaders to address these issues. By 1875, Lincoln steps down after serving 3 terms. He keeps his promise not to run for a 4th, saying the presidency isn't meant to last forever. But his impact on the country is undeniable. Under Lincoln's leadership, Reconstruction is far more successful than in our real timeline. Freed slaves have land, education, and political power. Southern states are reintegrated into the Union more smoothly, and violent groups like the Ku Klux Klan are kept in check. However, Lincoln's work isn't a perfect fix. Racism and white supremacy still exist, and there's still a long way to go toward true equality. Lincoln's survival leaves behind a legacy of hope and progress. Schools, monuments, and even towns are named after him, honoring the man who not only saved the Union, but also gave millions of Americans a better future. So, what do you think? Could Lincoln's survival have healed the nation faster? Or were some problems too big for even him to solve? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating alternate histories.